Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Ari Talks About Music. I'm Ari, and today I'll be reviewing this new Panda Bear album, Sinister Grift. Sinister Grift is the eighth album by the American musician Panda Bear, and is one that I think builds a lot on a lot of his previous albums, many of which I did find to be a slightly subpar quality for his usual standards. The album starts off with the song Praise, which opens with this really nice guitar riff, and just the classic sounding Panda Bear vocals sounding very playful but without being too annoying. And overall, I just really like the progression and the structure that this song has, being mildly unpredictable. Anywhere But Here is much more stripped back and simple, and to be honest, I think the song actually feels very lacking because of it. And I think in general, just the flow of the song as well is very awkward, being very stop-start, as if it's trying to build to something and go somewhere, but it just never really does. 50mg shows off some really nice sound effects, as well as a very simple guitar that, despite being so simple and lasting the entire song, still sounds really good and just serves as a nice background for the whole song. And I think just the song as a whole has a very lush and summery feel to it. So how about that? We're getting summer in February. Ends Meet has some really nice vocal effects, and on the whole, just a very nice progression to the song. Once again, just has a very playful kind of feel to it, but even more so than the other songs we've seen so far, especially just with a lot of the instruments that are incorporated into the song. I do also like the slightly more experimental side that this track shows off, just kind of coming in small bursts throughout the song, but it still fits into the album really well despite being so out there in some moments. Just as well, despite being a much more chaotic sounding song, still manages to keep that very stripped back sound of the rest of the album, and especially in its second half just shows off a lot more arrangements and instruments that just blend in all so well together. And I think that this song also just has one of the best vocal performances on the entire album. Fairy Lady opens with these really strange psychedelic sounds, which I think gives it quite a rough transition from the previous track, but the song on its own still does sound really good. The very simple vocals on top of that give this song a really nice contrast, and the slight hint of brass instruments being used also sounds really good, and I really wish that that's something this song did a little bit more of. Venom's In is a huge tone shift on the album, bringing a much softer and darker sound. The guitar sounds so soft and so mellow, along with the vocals also just being really, really nice. I think this is definitely a really good tone shift that was used very well, with much of the album up until this point sounding very playful and lighthearted, and it's nice to hear something so much darker. Left in the Cold then continues the much darker theme, with a very dissonant yet very quiet guitar sound for the entire song. The vocals are so mysterious and so atmospheric, and despite the song being pretty much the same for its entire runtime, I wouldn't want it to be any different because of the beautiful atmosphere that it creates, and it's one that you really need to take in for the entire time it's there. Then Elegy for Noah Lou keeps that theme going, being probably the darkest song on the album, opening with this anxious, brooding guitar riff and very depressive vocals. There are so many organic sound effects used on this track, such as the scratching of a wind blowing, which adds so much atmosphere and honestly almost make this sound like it could be a song off of a Phil Elverum project. Then finally, the closing track Defense featuring Cindy Lee brings back the slightly more light-hearted sound of the rest of the album, which definitely does sound quite refreshing after a run of three much darker tracks. The song shows off a really nice guitar solo, and overall is just a really great song that is just a nice way to end the album. And so overall, it's just great to hear another really good album from Panda Bear. I think it does take a while to really get going, but once you hit that run of three tracks towards the end, it's absolutely worth your time to listen to. And this comparison might seem a little bit out there, but bear with me. I think a lot of this album, especially in the first half, actually reminds me a lot of Talking Heads' Remain in Light, in the sense that the instrumentation almost feels a bit overly simple and almost like it's missing something, and yet it somehow still manages to sound really good. And I think that Remain in Light does use that sound a lot better than Sinister Grift, but this album still manages to make something good out of it. And so with all of that being said, I'll be giving this album a 7 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching this review. Please be sure to listen to this album yourself and tell me your thoughts below. Please leave a like if you liked the video, and please leave a dislike if you didn't like the video, and remember to stay hydrated.